What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, but it's not a Dr. Vibe Show thing tonight. It's a men and masculinity thing tonight. And if you don't know what men and masculinity is, hang in there. You're going to find out, and you're going to find out about a great new series of epic conversations that I'm very honored to be hosting and being a part of. But before we get any further, I just like to shout out to everyone in the room. Of course, my co-hosts or my special friend here tonight, Lee Rosen. I'll introduce him fully in a moment. We have Boyle, Tom, Gabe, a young lady named Deb, Free Pharrell, hello, the Hello Room, and Gary Farb. Thank you so much for taking the time to stop by and enjoy the first of many epic conversations. I had the pleasure of meeting this outstanding young gentleman, it's about 2.5 years ago now.
Yeah.
And we were introduced through the Good Men Project, and I found out about this wonderful organization called Men and Masculinity that puts on a yearly epic event about masculinity. And I was invited to their leadership night. I did some interviews for some of their speakers for their event, and I hung out in one of their rooms, and I hung out with one of their circles, and Dr. John Izzo and I had a very good conversation during one of the circles, and next thing you know, Dr. John Izzo, I'm going, oh, he's the guest speaker. And then all of a sudden he mentioned Dr. Vibe about 4 or 5 times from the podium. And I saw people from Men and Masculinity going, what the heck is this Dr. Vibe guy all about? So long story short, it's been an honor and pleasure to be part of their core team since that time, and also to MC their last year's conference, which I know Lee will talk about high level details wise as we go on. So tonight we're beginning M&M Explores, and Lee's going to talk about that. But let Lee introduce himself and also give some background about Men and Masculinity, and also about M&M Explores and everyone that's in the room. I've locked it for the moment, but I will open it up soon. So welcome to the family of Get Vocal, Mr. Lee Rosen.
Hey, thanks, Dr. Vibe. Hey, so the important stuff is, I'm getting an echo again. That's a little bit better.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that's better. Well, the important stuff is I'm married to a lovely woman named Deborah, and I've got 3 kids. And I work in the IT industry. We build speech recognition products and AI products for hospitals mostly. My life consisted of taking care of family mostly, focusing on family until about 12, 13 years ago. I met a mentor of mine, Mitch Seaman, and slowly turned my life around, where it became less focusing on family and more, continue to focus on family and more focusing on, what is the contribution I could be to the world. I got to meet a bunch of characters. Some of them are on the line here. Tom Mack, you especially, Dr. Vibe, and got involved in men's work and men's circles, and supported that with all my heart. And then I was talking to another mentor of mine, James O'Rourke, and the idea of our men's circles, which mostly took place in backyards and were quiet. And, if you mentioned the men's circle, people would roll their eyes or look at it suspiciously. What are you men getting together? And, his idea was to branch out and do something a bit more public. And the Men and Masculinity Summit generated out of that conversation and has evolved over the last couple of years. And you came on board, we met you, and we're looking to get, the premise behind it is to get speakers and to start to work with good content that's going out there, and try to understand the stereotypes and our inherited beliefs, our social beliefs. What does it mean to be a man today? And engage in those conversations with the world, not only men and men's teams, but organizations, leaders, our spouses, our kids, our friends and coworkers, and work to get a deeper understanding of the issues that are out there. And so we put on summits in 2016, 2017. As you mentioned, we had Dr. John Izzo in 2017 and Warren Farrell in 2018. And we got a lot of great video content, and it's a all volunteer organization. There's no payments or anything like that to any of the people. Everybody volunteers. And this year this is our first kickoff. We're going to roll out M&M Explorers, which is going to be, again, continued work with looking into content and digging into the issues that are out there and exploring them.
Excellent. Well, that is a great introduction. And again, thanks to everybody that's on the line. Really appreciate the response. And as I mentioned, we'll open up the room in a little bit. Lee and myself and the Men and Masculinity core team have been discussing M&M Explores for a while. And we were always bouncing around topics. And the other day I said, you know what, Lee, let's talk about Me Too. No one's talking about Me Too. It's such a light subject. And so we said, let's put the question out there. How are men handling Me Too? So Lee, why did you, well, I know I wanted to start off with this conversation topic. Why do you feel it's a good one to start off the M&M Explorers conversations with?
It's scary. It's uncomfortable for me. And I think it it started with, like, it's an old thing. It's around 2 years, it raised attention. It got a lot of publicity, and then it sort of died down. I think people navigated through the landscape of it. And I was talking to my son, Andrew, and because we were talking about this kickoff one, and he mentioned that, if you recall that old picture from Life magazine from 45, the one where 1945, after VJ Day, Japanese surrendered, there's a famous picture of a man that kissed a woman. And they have a gigantic statue of that, like 26 feet in Sarasota, Florida. And then somebody wrote Me Too on it. And then, it was like, okay, it's alive again in our lives. And we had this long conversation about it. Like, the premise of the photo was that there was a man that just came back from just came back from the war in Times Square in New York City, and he was drunk, had a few beers, grabbed the woman and kissed her. So it's like, I never viewed that picture like that, or that statue like that. It's always been a positive thing, but it occurs today as potentially a negative thing. So I think that, Jen, the reason why, there's still a lot to uncover. Where does that fit in? There's a lot to uncover. So we thought that'd be a good place to start with this conversation.
Excellent. So I think it is too, and it's a subject that, I work coaching and mentoring fathers and men, and this subject comes off regularly, strangely enough. So I thought let's start it off with tonight. So the first conversation piece I want to ask Lee, and I'm going to open up the room right now for any of the guests or friends on here. Are men talking about Me Too? Like, in your circle, are they talking about Me Too, and what are they saying?
So I think we should open it up to everybody, but I've not had, usually there've been brief comments. I wouldn't say they've been, well, this is my experience, right? So I haven't seen a lot of men talk about it. Usually they'll make a comment about it. And usually it's with some degree of caution.
So it's interesting you say this. So they make comments, but they don't have conversations.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed. Yeah.
And well, I'd like to welcome Gary Farb, another member of the Men and Masculinity core team, our dad for everybody. And welcome, Gary. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm really interested to see how this conversation unfolds. And just a quick note to your question: men in my circles of all ages do not talk about the Me Too movement.
Go ahead.
It's like, yeah. I'm talking about men ages in their 30s, 40s, 50s, into their 60s. No one actually talks about it. What they talk about is this label of toxic masculinity, which is an offshoot, I think, of part of the Me Too movement. But I don't hear them talking about the Me Too movement. Personally speaking, I feel a lot of shame, for myself as a man, even though I was one of the early adopters of the women's lib movement because of my mother. And I'm appalled at, the criticism of men that I hear, until my wife pointed out to me that most men are not where I am on the journey. But to the main point of your question, I haven't heard any of the men and I'm
Yeah.
talking about dozens of men, none of them talk about it.
Do you find that strange? Either one of you?
I personally did, until it was pointed out to me that maybe because of my age, I'm in my 70s, and maybe I'm further down the curve. I've dealt with a lot of the issues that the Me Too movement's complaining about. And as I say, I grew up in the turbulent 60s when Gloria Steinem and the cohort, Betty Friedan, were creating the women's lib movement. And, I joined what I call the men's movement as a reaction to that. And then I found myself spending the rest of my time keeping up with and transforming my own conversations. And so the surprise is that other men haven't done that. And then when I look at the age of the men, I didn't expect it of the millennials or the 40-year-olds. I did expect it of the 15, 60-year-olds, but it's like they just put their head down in the sand and ignored it. And that to me is the puzzlement.
Before I ask Lee about why does he feel there's a lack of conversation amongst men on this Me Too, Tony Davis is saying, I find it's hard to talk about anything because people are so sensitive, quote, politically correct, unquote, these days. So is there a sense of political correctness in regards to men speaking about Me Too, in your opinion, Lee?
Yeah, with the men I work with in the men's communities, there's not a lot of conversation about it. I agree with Gary. At work, there's a different sense, though. At work, there's through my organizations and other colleagues I've talked to, there's actions that have occurred after it. A friend who works in a law firm, and they canceled their Christmas parties. Right?
Wow.
They didn't want to put alcohol together. And yeah, they're a law firm, and they didn't want to put alcohol together with men and women from the organization. So, there's actions like that. There's it's interesting you said I never thought about that. There's very short discussions on it, if at all, but they're usually comments like, "I'm not going to go there. That's not worth it." Just in some of the social media kind of stuff we put out to advertise this. The question was, how are men handling, Me Too? And, some of the comments are very cautiously or very quietly. And I think that's where, they're kind of staying from a corporate perspective, and colleagues that I work with, I think they're quietly staying in a box, which isn't really men being themselves.
Right.
So there's a tampering down of their actions is what I would see outside of the men's circle. And inside the men's circle, I agree with Gary, there's not as much conversation.
Okay. So just a few things on the Get Vocal side, people. Again, there are 2 spots open. Please join in the conversation. We don't want to be flapping all night. We want you to provide the content. On the Facebook page, here's some comments. Cliff Cannon says, I was involved with a few groups last year when the Me Too movement came out. Any men who spoke up about abuse at the hands of a woman were shut down and berated worse than any who admitted to wrongdoing. Interesting. Gentleman Tom Mack, if men put their weekends into action and practice the disciplines taught here, they should be no concern of Me Too. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that support. So that's coming from the Facebook page at the present time. It's interesting. Do you feel that there is insecurity, afraidness because of the lack of conversation and just comment, Lee?
There's a lot at risk, right? If you look what's happening, people that are like, there's a big spectrum of what's going on. There's people that are doing horrible things, right? That should be outed and obvious. And, that's on the fringe edge of society. You might call them, the criminals, right? And they're criminals that had power that used it. So it's good that people that were in the effect of that are talking up. But then there's different parts of what's going on with the backlash of that, which are accusations and bad dates like Aziz Ansari and things like that. So people that didn't necessarily have a history of anything, but had something that popped up, had their careers interrupted. So I think there's a sense of that lurking in the background, right?
Okay. Gary, you are back with us. Are you wanting to add to what Lee has just shared with us?
No, I've actually started an inquiry of all the men, and I'm talking about 100 men, to try and penetrate your question. The fact that men aren't talking about it, and these are progressive men, these are men who have been exposed to, teaching on how to end acts against violence against women. And most men, when I was a leader inside of my organization, they thought violence meant physical, and they were educated that it can be economic, spiritual, psychological, emotional, other forms of violence. And these same men who have an awareness beyond what I would say the average man has. For example, I never thought about violence being economic or spiritual, but these men don't talk about it as far as I'm aware. And rather than assume I know what they're thinking, I start to canvass these 100-odd men. So at this point, that's the only thing I have to add is, like, within our own men's circles, maybe what there is to do is to ask the question, as you did, what do you think about it? And if you don't, and the more important question, are you talking about it to other men? I was really surprised to learn on my limited feedback that they weren't. They were dealing with their issues, except that one. And as I say, the only one that ever surfaced was, what is this toxic masculinity? What does that mean? So that might be the safe way to approach it, but it has no traction as far as I can tell.
Okay.
But you know what I see though, Gary, is it has traction in actions, right? It has traction. Take last year, for example. We when we were looking for speakers for the Men and Masculinity Summit, we got speaker applications that were overwhelmingly from women. Like, my observation is the men are quieter, more reserved, right? Is that something you see?
Yeah, you see that's an interesting distinction, because my observation is that women are on their third iteration of the feminist movement. Men have just completed their first iteration and are working on their second. I think we're 10 years behind the women in this conversation.
Wow. Interesting.
And I say that conservatively. I know by time what I'm calling the men's movement, I'm going back to 1984, started, we were already 10 years behind. Not only have we not closed the gap, women have accelerated the conversation. Unfortunately, it's become politicized in a way I don't think anyone wants. But we haven't closed the gap. We're entering our second iteration of understanding what the movement, the masculinity movement, could be and is. Women are in their third. And I don't like, frankly, the way the third iteration is going, but we live in very interesting times, to use the old Chinese expression, that curse. I mean, we see it in other ways, but that's my observation, Lee. It's not that men are quieter about it. We're just behind.
Want to shout out to C. Will. Thanks for stopping by. Again, feel free to jump in and take a seat. I know that Free Pharrell. Oh, so Free Pharrell saying, in my circle we discuss it, which is good. That is good news.
Yeah.
And well, Mr. Pharrell, if you're comfortable, I'd love you to jump in, because we'd like to hear men that are discussing it in their circles. Here we go. Thank you so much.
Hey, what's going on, brother?
Outstanding. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I can't complain too much.
Good. So thanks for jumping in. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. You said in your circles you discuss this. How did the conversation start about Me Too?
At a certain point, it was kind of prevalent within media, social media, so it was kind of one of those hot topics.
Before you go any further, you need to tilt your camera because we're only seeing your eyes down.
Oh, really? Okay. Is that better?
It's we can't see the top of your head, but we can see more of you. Okay, let's go with that.
Okay. So, yeah, it started out being as just kind of one of those hot topics that was on, like I said, media, social media. You had things, I guess, about the Me Too movement and a lot of the women that were coming out, and even more so, I think Terry Crews is what kind of initiated a lot of the conversations.
Yes.
And well, initiated the conversation with me through my male counterparts. Like I'd had conversations with women, but as far as I guess in relation to how we may have behaved in the past, or and things of that nature, I think Terry Crews is kind of one of the things that kind of sparked that conversation between myself and my male counterparts, and just kind of examine the behaviors as far as what is described as toxic masculinity, and things of that sort. But what I made the comment before, that I think the conversation changes when at the point where we get into long-term relationships, because we're not treating that relationship as kind of one of those indiscriminate encounters, as a lot of these, I think these Me Too movement or situation, not Me Too movement, but Me Too situations that occur as kind of a dominance or indiscriminate encounter, to where you're not necessarily have that much care or love for that particular person. But it changes because you're not treating I guess in my circles, you're not treating your wives or long-term girlfriends with that same type of behavior. And plus, I mean, we're older and we understand that behavior is not necessarily acceptable once you get to a certain point in life. But it's also, I think we've discussed that to a certain degree for a long time, it's promoted and also condoned by men and women alike, through certain expectations as far as how you're supposed to behave as a young male, a young boy, or to a teenage boy, to a young man. You're supposed to go out and kind of get as many women as you can get, and so on and so forth, without any necessarily real regard to the woman as a person. They're seeing a lot more of an object, and that's kind of one of the things that I talked about or bring up in the circles. Like, it's difficult to really come out of if you've been conditioned for 20, 30 years of your life to behave a particular way, and you don't see it as being predatory. But I guess overall it is a sense of really being predatory, in addition to it being welcomed by certain women. Right. There's an expectation because they're like, okay, you're a man, you're supposed to behave in this particular manner. You're the hunter, you're the gatherer, so you're supposed to pursue me. You're supposed to just exhibit these types of behaviors, or almost barbaric types of behaviors. And then it also, I guess, it comes up. Now we have that Me Too movement, and it's kind of like, well, I've been taught my whole life to act this way. Now you're telling me it's not correct. Or if I didn't act this way in a certain point in my life, then I was less than a man. I wasn't a real man. I didn't exhibit those, type of manly behaviors. So it's kind of it's a difficult space to maneuver in oftentimes, because on the one hand, we see how it portrays itself negatively, but then on the other hand, there's almost an expectation for you to behave that way. Even the words that are spoken over young children, you got the young boys or the infant boys, and oh yeah, he's going to be a heartbreaker. He's going to be a ladies' man. He's going to be you're already putting that on your infant child. And so, I mean, I'm a firm believer in, speaking those things into reality. You putting those words out into the universe, and now he grows up acting a particular way. Well, you've been setting this precedent since he was an infant.
Right.
So, and now it's a certain level of conditioning that comes, and now it has to be undone almost instantaneously at the point when you're 25, 30, however, you're beyond the point of adolescence. Right. Now, you shouldn't be acting like this because that's not how real men act. Well, I've been told all my life that this is how I'm supposed to act. So now how am I supposed to act? and the conflict in that. So yeah, like I guess to sum it all up, we have those conversations, and also just kind of things that some of my friends. I don't have any children, but my friends have children, and most of them have boys. It's like, well, how are you going to teach your son to behave at this point, knowing what you know, and how is that? How are you going to counteract the socialization of the behaviors and to what you know? So,
Okay. Anything you want to add with that, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, what I hear is like there's an awareness, things that are different now. There's an awareness of the environment, right? So I heard Pharrell talk about, I think you were talking about dating, right? How are you supposed to? There's an expectation on a man to date, and there's an expectation on the man to initiate make the initiation. Typically, I would say. That's probably still in the case for both men and women would expect the man to initiate that.
right.
And what's it's a real fine line. What's the difference between initiating that and harassment, right? Stop.
Right.
You ask once, or do you ask twice, or well, that could be. You're in a bit of a minefield if you're not emotionally aware of what's going on.
I'm going to ask Free for All another conversation because I just want to welcome Tony to the conversation. Tony, just hold on a moment. So, free for real. When you approach women the first time about this subject, what was their reaction?
I think it was. I guess what was their reaction? There are a lot of women that haven't been in, I guess, these particular situations, or if they have been, they didn't recognize it because it was, like I stated before, there was an expectation for the man to behave this way. Like I want the man to come and chase me. So if he's not doing that, then I don't consider him. I don't respect him as a man. But I have also heard from other women that have, I guess, stated to the contrary, to where it's like, no, I don't want to be handled a particular way. I want to be respected. Okay, my ex-wife was a feminist and also a sociologist, so a lot of the conversations I think that I had stemmed from a lot of things that she and I were talking about, having agency and autonomy, and also just something as simple as wanting to be able to walk the dog outside without being verbally accosted by a group of guys standing on a corner. Like I just want to go for a walk. And now, because I don't want to have a conversation with you, now I'm being, called all other names other than what the name has been given to me. And so that's where a lot of those conversations have come from. And to which is like, I understand those feelings, but I also understand that there are women that still expect those things to happen, or they've been conditioned for that to happen. So to me, it's twofold, but I also think there's a lot of confusion. Because on one side they're saying that, oh, you shouldn't want to be spoken to that way. You shouldn't want to be handled or manhandled or grabbed or groped or any of those things. But there are women that desire and like that attention or welcome that attention.
All right.
And so it's difficult when you meet somebody initially, you can't really tell what it is that they like. You automatically, it's a shot in the dark.
Okay.
And it's a gamble. So it's like if you make the wrong move, you potentially lose out on, furthering that relationship.
Okay. I'm gonna cut you right there. I'm gonna switch it over to Tony. You're more than welcome to stay in the box. Again, if anyone wants to come in, please. We are full right now, which is a beautiful feeling. Just message me on the side on the Get Vocal platform, and I'll certainly get you in. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, actually, what I was wanting to point out, it goes a lot with what Anthony was saying. Anthony, good finally talk to you. But what I was wanting to really point out is what I said earlier in the comments, that it's hard to even have a conversation today because people are so sensitive and politically correct, and it's kind of like just walking on eggshells, just trying to figure out how do you behave, where common sense is going out the window. So pretty much what I'm trying to get to and ask is, do you think that there is it has gone to an extreme on both parties, both masculinity and femininity, to the point that there is a power struggle to where people just don't know how to interact anymore, because we do have to deal with things that Anthony's talked about. I know in my group of circles, it's dealt with all the time. I've dealt with a lot of people who go to Comic Cons and comic book festivals and that kind of stuff. They have to put up big old signs. Please do not touch the models. Please, touching is prohibited. That kind of stuff. And it's got to be a point that it's almost a power struggle between men and women, or men who wants to be women, or just whatever.
Okay, so I'll just chime in a bit there. I think that all people, whatever sex you are, you want to be treated with fairness and respect. And I think, the Me Too movement, there are people who say it's gone too far one way. And I guess the sensitivity issue, it's got so rigid, or as you say, politically correct, it's hard for men to navigate. It's very difficult for men to navigate. So I'm just going to put it out there. Lee, what do you have to say?
I think, well, I think you got to keep your hands to yourself, right? I think that there's a line there that, we shouldn't have to put up signs that say, don't touch the models, right? I wouldn't want somebody touching me, and if I was up there, and I'm sure, so there's got to be things that are clear for us to navigate. And I think it's these type of discussions that start to make it clearer. And I think there's the rules changed, right? And we got to figure them out. But we all, I think one place to start is don't put your hands on people. And then you're going to have to read social cues after that, right?
But I think one of the challenges is, and I think not just with men handling Me Too, is the definitions are always changing. It's like it's masculinity, manhood. What is masculinity and manhood these days? And maybe that's another conversation topic we have. But in handling of the Me Too movement, it's such a sensitive, such a politically hot topic. It can be very difficult. And when a man doesn't even have a sense of himself, having to maybe deal with this topic is a whole other situation.
Dr. Vibe, I think that's really the key. If a man doesn't have a sense of himself, he's left to other cues to figure it out. And right now, trying to figure out a sense of yourself from what society says, right? If you were to plop in here today with society the way it is, you'd have created a different sense of yourself as a man if you base it just on society than you would have 50 years ago or 40 years ago or 30 years ago, right? And I think that's where the real concern is people, young boys and young men, figuring out what is the sense of themselves. And you could see that most of a lot of the messages you'd get over the last couple of years from Me Too is the extreme negative ones, like all men are like this, right? All men are like Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Matt Lauer, and they use their power to force others to do stuff. So I wonder what they're looking at, right? As they grow up in the society, what do they see? Is that their view? And especially for, young women as well, is that their view of what men are? Or is that, 1% or the sick men or the men that need help?
Point taken. Anyone else want to add to that?
Well, let me just ask you, I don't know, I'm not quite sure your position of the minimum masculinity thing, but do you agree that it's a power struggle between both parties? It in a sense, one party saying, no, I'm in control, no, I'm in control, where we're just kind of need to learn to work together.
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself an expert. I'm here like everybody else learning about it. Is it I don't know if I thought of it as a power struggle. I thought of it and maybe it is, right? It's people declaring what's right for them. In a certain respect, here we are in Men and Masculinity. We're asking the question, what's right for men in this situation. It doesn't occur to me as pulling for power. I would say that I would describe what Men and Masculinity is about, and what I'm about would be about finding a way where we both could live, in a way that it's clear and it's equal, right? And different versions of equal, right? What's equal for a man or equal for a woman, it won't be the same, but it would be equal.
Okay, cool. Free Pharrell?
In regards to the power struggle, I think there is a power struggle, and I think there are far more men other than Terry Crews that have been a victim or victimized as far as the Me Too movement. And I think I guess, and the reason I bring it up is because I think there's a lot more empathy that can be shown, and a space for understanding. But I think that the navigation is still going to be difficult because it's based on individual tastes and desires and feelings and what it is you want. I want the idea, like, I want a man to take control until I don't want a man to take control, because so it's kind of like, well, almost the sense of have your cake and eat it too. Mm-hmm. And I think it's definitely a power struggle, but I don't think we have to struggle with it as much as we do. There is a point, you should keep your hands to yourself. I think as children,
well, a lot of that's common sense,
Yeah, I was taught that as a child, keep your hands to yourself. Don't don't hit anybody, don't take anybody else's things. Keep your hands to yourself. Don't, if they hit you, then whatever. If you're taught to hit them back or whatever the case is, but it's just like, be respectful as a person. But then there's stuff, even now to social media comedians. There's a female comedian on social media who had a video out that said, was talking about going out on a date and a guy being too respectful, which I've been called that before. It's like, oh, you're trying to respect me and I'm not trying to respect myself. This is almost verbatim what she said. So it's like when you encounter a woman such as that, it's like, well, now this is conflicting because, okay, you want what is perceived by another woman to be disrespect, or could put me inside of, or along the likes of Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, or like all of these, like the things that you're wanting me to do is almost will put me into that category, but only because the only reason I wouldn't be is because that's what you desire, that's what you like. So like, well, how do I deal with that? Because if I was taught to be controlling or domineering in that regard, the only thing that's going to do is further reinforce those, ideologies. So.
Okay. Well, Free Pharrell, I'm going to let you go because I have a feeling where people want to come in the room.
Let me hop off too, because I have a feeling some other people want to hop off.
Okay, everyone wants to jump off. You can stay on, Tony. We've got a room open. But yeah, I thank Free Pharrell. Thank you so much for the commentary. There is a spot open if people want to jump in. Gary saying on Get Vocal, it's all about power from a woman's point of view. Good. I'm glad you're jumping because I wanted to expand on that.
I'd like to hear that.
Yes, we want to hear on that
one. When I talk to women, because it's important for me to get all points of view, they remind me constantly it's not about a current situation called the Me Too movement. They talk about 5,000 years of male patriarchy. And the informed women, the educated women, the ones who have read their history, will give me chapter and verse how men have always had the upper hand for very good reasons. They don't deny the reasons, security and all the rest, and being safe. But every time we talk about it in our terms, they put it in the context of male patriarchy, and they don't mean male patriarchy in the most strident sense. They mean that historically in the West, if not other cultures, and some do talk about other cultures, men have been dominant. For example, until about 125 years ago, women didn't have the right to vote. the legal equation of a woman was husband plus wife equals one equals husband. And they were chattels. The same way you have a car as a chattel and a piece of furniture as a chattel, a woman was a chattel. And they don't lose sight of that. So they say, oh, wow, great. Things have gotten better dramatically for women in the last 50, 75 years. But don't give us this bullshit that the power structure is the same for men and women. And they look at, the different demographics, economic and opportunities, et cetera. But it's a mindset that we don't appreciate as men, because we've lived inside that patriarchy for 5,000 years. It's part of the air we breathe. It doesn't occur to us like anything is wrong. But to a woman, it's like, yeah, we're better off. You're a great guy, but don't confuse the power structure with your sense of entitlement and privilege. And it's a very hard one for us to get our heads around. What do you mean I'm entitled? I'll give you a personal example. I grew up in a household where my father was an ex-Army sergeant. And when he got really frustrated and angry, which was probably about every 6 weeks, he would yell. He would yell at my mother, he would yell at me, he would yell at my brother. I grew up thinking, it's not nice, good, healthy, whatever, to yell as often as he did. So I trained myself not to yell like him, except maybe 2 or 3 times a year. But when I got so frustrated, I wanted to yell. I felt, and I didn't see this until recently, I was entitled. God damn it, I'm such a great guy. I'm such a great provider. I'm not like my father. I don't yell every 6 weeks. But you just frustrate me to the point where no matter what I say, you don't listen. And I'm entitled to yell. Well, where the hell did that come from? Where's the respect in that? But, and I'm just using that as a personal example. There's a whole continuum of power structures like that. The other thing that a lot of men don't appreciate is that in a man's world, power is hierarchical. We have a chain of command. We've been conditioned on sports teams and in armies and elsewhere, earn an honor rank and respect command. Women have a flat, even power structure. A woman gets too powerful in a woman's circle, the other women bring her down to size. It's in a flat structure. It's not hierarchical. So we've got two structural dynamics that are different, and we've got a cultural tradition that's different. And yeah, it's about power underneath it all. And when I say to a woman, why can't you engage in this conversation? Their answer is, you're trying to co-opt us. We have a battle to win before we can listen to what you're saying, because what you're doing will weaken our ability to win this power struggle. I don't like it. Well, that's what I'm hearing. Complete.
Well put. Well put. So then let me take it a little bit further. And yes, welcome to Patricia. Welcome to Terry. We have an open room. If anyone wants to jump in, it's interesting about the power struggle. So I'm going to put out this conversation piece. Is the Me Too movement swung too far one way? Because Tony, you had mentioned about the political correctness. Has it gone? Okay, go ahead, and see. Will's going to. Go ahead.
I would say that it has. Bailey's point that people just don't know how to interact with each other, and people are so sensitive, and it's like a power struggle. Women are trying to get their power, men are trying to get their power. I'm like, it's a losing battle between both.
So both sides. So you feel in this environment of Me Too, both men and women are losing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'll let Will come on first. Will, welcome. How you doing?
I'm all right. How you doing, Dr. Vibe?
Outstanding. Thanks for stopping in. What do you have to share?
Well, first of all, I may have a different view. I'm from a younger generation, so just from my perspective, well, first of all, the Me Too movement is about the women's empowerment to me, and it's justified by bad behavior. You know what I'm saying? I think we should acknowledge that there's been a lot of bad behavior, that did happen, right? And so we can't deny that a lot of these men in power behaved very badly, and therefore it opened the window or the door for other women who have been mistreated to get justice. And I think that is a good thing, and it's starting to end a lot of bad behavior on the part of men in power.
I would agree with that 100%.
And that's the other thing is most of it is about men in power, not necessarily the common man, right?
Good point. Interesting point.
Yeah, most of us don't deal with that situation unless you're a manager, unless you're the boss, unless you have some kind of power. You don't understand that you have to behave differently. Like Pharrell Free Pharrell was saying about how we're expected. Like I was trained the same way by my uncles and cousins. You gotta be a man. You gotta go out and do all this other stuff, which I never accepted, but they were trying to indoctrinate me into that, aggressive manhood sort of stance. But if you become the boss of anything where you have women working with you, you can't behave that way. It's just not right, because it's a different dynamic. You're now talking about economics and livelihood and different things like that. It's not a dating game now. Now you're in a position where you can use your authority in a sexual way, and to me, those two shouldn't mix. You know what I'm saying? Like the job and sex, it's just it's an area you don't want to really get into. That's why there's so much HR documentation every time you get a job anywhere, and videos over and over again. You got to, even working at McDonald's or Hardee's, is like sexual harassment. Don't do this. It's not right. And so it's like, I don't know, maybe I got the message, but it's like very clear to me you shouldn't mix those two. And honestly, I had to learn that myself when I first started my own business and I started hiring people. Like, it's like, oh, she's cute, I should hire her. Like, no, that's not the right way to think about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're going to get yourself in trouble just trying to get all the cute girls to work for you or work with you. You know what I'm saying? Which is a very enticing temptation. And what I notice is, okay, I got the cute girls working with me, but I can't do anything with them because that would be abuse of power, right? So it kind of even limited my possibilities. I can't holler at her because she's going to now weigh that within the in her response, or even what is going on. Like, is he trying to say I have to? You know what I'm saying? It kind of puts in things that you really don't want in the mix anyway. If you're trying to be if you're trying to operate in integrity, So,
see, well, let me ask you a question on that. Are you saying you would treat them different from a male employee?
No, because I wouldn't holler at a man employee either.
Okay.
I mean, I happen to be straight, but even if, like, say I was gay, I think it would put in the same kind of weirdness. Like, I don't think. But so let's say this. Okay, we're all humans, and there is sexuality involved in life. You can't bar it from. I mean, there's some companies that do, but I think what's more, shall we say, honest way to deal with it is to say, okay, if you're interested in somebody, you can let them know that you're interested, and if they reciprocate that, that's okay. Go with it, But if it's not, let it go and don't bring it up ever again, type of thing, because it's like we're here to work, and it, which is why I feel like there's all that HR stuff, because it does mess up, the workflow, even if it is reciprocated. Because then if y'all break up, y'all have a fight, then like you don't want to bring the paper to her, and she don't want to bring the paper to you, and we don't, what I'm saying? We got to get the, and so it's like, but it is part of life. So I would say, like some companies have policies that are real strict, and some of them have like, okay, you just got to come let us know, and so we know it's mutual, and one person is not kind of domineering the other. But even those companies still have the one where you can't do the supervisor subordinate thing,
right. So see, Will, I want to ask you the same question I asked Free Pharrell. Is that are you having any type of conversation about this subject with the men you associate with and or the women you associate with?
Well, just generally, like Gary was saying, with the women, it is, Yes, and like we just had a conversation a couple of days ago in the Elephant Room about this, and but it wasn't about the Me Too movement. It was more about just women having the being exploited, right, and having the right to speak up. And I think we, as men, like Gary was saying, have to recognize that this is an issue, right? So me being a young black man, I would like, well, I've been, exploited, and I've been, disenfranchised and all this other stuff. So when women would say that I could be in that position of an oppressor, I couldn't compute. You know what I'm saying? But then you have to step back and reflect and look at the situation that they're in, and it is true. It's like, yeah, I can. Like I said, I haven't been doing it in my life, but I can. I have that so-called perceived authority in society to take over, like, and it, take over the situation because I'm a man. At the end of the day, like my voice is going to be a little deeper, it's a little resonant, it has more authority in their minds, and sometimes it can be overbearing to the women. You know what I'm saying? In other words, like I want to do this. We're going to do this, and even though I don't feel like I'm being, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes that's maybe how they perceive it, and that's why I wanted to make sure that their voice is heard and considered, like Gary was saying, on an even playing field, unless you're the boss, but when you're just, I think we have to be a little bit more sensitive about it as men.
Yeah, see, well, I'd even add a little bit more to that. Not only is it, your voice is deeper, but, for most cases, men are physically larger. There's, we've all, I know I raised my kids. It's like I raised my daughter, like, be aware, it wasn't necessarily men are good. Like I raised my daughter, it's, you better be aware. So, I'm guilty of that myself. We talked about raising our boys in a certain way, but I raised my children, and I think most men, it's a stereotype that, you're not dating until you're 38, or you're not.
Right, to the daughter, yeah.
So there's an underlying threat that, parents, I have given, to our, they've grown up with, like, there's a question. And I think just the fact that that your voice is deeper, and you're also probably physically bigger and stronger in most cases, is subtly underlying the situation too.
I want to ask C. Will too, because you're of a younger generation. How do you feel men that are a generation ahead of you are handling the Me Too movement? And if there are any suggestions you feel that you could give them in regards to handling the Me Too movement?
Sure. And like I said, not step on anyone's toes, but I feel like sometimes they're handling it like they're threatened, and we need to stop it, which I don't agree with. I did feel threatened at first, like, oh, and I'm like, well, did I do anything? Did I say anything to anybody in the past that may have been misconstrued and all that? But I don't feel like it should be a power struggle thing. That's what I'm basically getting at. And I don't feel like it should be us against them or anything like that. And so that being said, because, I'm aware, I was just having this conversation earlier today with a young woman about how old, she helps old men, that are basically in their 70s and 80s, and how he's a flirt, and he'll smack her on the butt and do different things like that were acceptable probably in his generation,
right?
And so, but it obviously aren't now. But being that he's old and harmless, she thinks it's funny. But the reason I'm saying that is I'm just imagining people of a certain age may have done some things in the past that weren't. You know what I'm saying? So that maybe also come as far as the feeling the threat, where, well, what if somebody from out the blue you know what I'm saying, tries to say something about me. So, you know, in that situation, I wouldn't know what to, you know, you'd be humble. Just address it off a public forum would be the wisest thing to possibly do, just for your own reputation. But if you don't have anything to worry about, I would say embrace it, because it's ultimately going to make things better for your children, and like Lee was saying, for your own daughter. And looks like Dr. Vibe disappeared for me. Is he still there for you, Lee?
He disappeared. Tom got on though, finally.
Hey, I am technologically challenged.
Oh, there he is. And now he's trying to get.
You're gonna have to give me a moment.
No problem. Well, it's good, Tom. It's good that you got on. You kicked me out of the room, but we got you in the room.
Nice.
So, Sewell, you're more than welcome to stay on with us. Tom finally got in. Hooray, hooray. Patricia A. on Get Vocal says, an old man might be harmless, but he still needs to learn how to respect others, even if that's a novel idea for his generation. Fully agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Tom.
I think Patricia should jump in. I'll step out.
Okay,
Thanks,
no problem. Tom, you need to probably just tip your camera up a bit, because we tip it up a bit if you can. Yeah, a little bit more. Okay, that it was good. Okay, we'll take you. We'll take it, because it was enough of a fight just getting you on, so we got you.
It's really nice to meet you.
Pleasure and honor.
I know the other dude with the glasses and the bald head over there. So.
Well, we'll talk offline so I can get the truth about him.
You get the truth when you talk to him. So.
I received that. Please share.
You could really make a seminar out of this whole conversation, because, you know, in the beginning, I was kind of laughing because you were mentioning Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan. They're from where I live. I live in Sag Harbor in New York. And
right.
So when Lee was originally talking about the drunken sailor kissing that woman, and it made the cover of Time magazine.
Yep.
It made me think about the beginning of the women's liberation movement. And I remember reading articles in the paper about women going out on strike. They're not going to do the ironing or the cooking anymore. And that was the beginning of a movement that really needed to happen for them. I think the Me Too movement is an important movement for the women, for awareness. And I think just like the women's liberation movement died down a bit, as women got more settled, they got into the workplace and equal rights. Proposition, is it 64, where women get equal time in college sports and things like that?
Yeah.
So, you know, that was a really important time in our history, and the history is very recent.
Yes.
And I think the Me Too movement is going to calm down at some point, but at the same time, it's kind of heartbreaking that, you know, for me, I'm 61. I did a lot of stupid things as a kid, but, you know, never did I ever disrespect a woman or a grab or just be out of place. I said stupid stuff because that's what men do anyway. But, you know, and I don't know why, because I didn't come from a happy household. I came from a world of violence.
Right.
But there was just something that was not right about being inappropriate with a woman, you know? And I've tried to teach that to my kids. I got 5 kids. So, and one of them is a girl, and she's a second year in college in Baltimore. And she was part of the Pink Pussy Hat movement,
Yep.
you know, the March on Washington, which is really necessary. But at the same time, you know, men need to face the fact that we come from a culture of hunters, gatherers, and warriors. Okay. And men are basically borderline sociopaths. Okay, I hope you can follow me on this for a minute.
I'm with you.
Okay, women don't go into bars and shoot it up and kill 50 people. Women don't go into mosques and kill 50 people. Women don't go blowing up buildings. You know, they just don't do that. Men are very dangerous. Men can be very, very dangerous. And I think that somehow, like, I practice martial arts, which goes back thousands of years. And, you know, with the men's work that I do, we have what we call a code of honor. And martial arts is the same thing. And the bad news is, I think today that we're in a place where we're at I call it the baby boom generation of single parenting. And in most cases, women have custody of their children. And they don't have the balance in that family that's really required to teach and mentor. You know, where's that masculine presence to teach and mentor and inspire your son to live a certain way, a code of honor? You know, when your son makes a mistake, you know, what are you going to teach him? You know, I think men really miss out on a chance for teachable moments. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's really, we have an opportunity. You know, I've known Lee for, geez, I don't know how long, but, you know, I did my men's weekend 25 years ago. And, you know, the amount of respect that I see that men don't hold for women is kind of parallel to, you know, some of the results that we've seen. And, you know, when I talk about men are borderline sociopaths, the other gentleman was mentioning men like, you know, Matt Lauer and Harvey Weinstein and all these, you know, ego can kill.
Yep.
And I think it's really important to really, you know, men need to be with their men. You know, it's just like we're very tribal, you know, and even before they used to go into battles, men used to be together with their men to figure out what their weaknesses were, because when I go into battle, I don't want to go in there with a weak man.
Right.
So I want to pull out whatever arrows he has hurting him. So when I do go into that battle, you know, he's got my back. So, you know, men have become accustomed to doing things alone. And I think that's a very dangerous place for us to be. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But that's why I'm saying you could run a whole seminar on this. There's so many thoughts going on.
I'm loving that idea, and Lee and I will discuss that definitely online with the rest of the core team. And I appreciate you taking the time to share. I appreciate your evaluated experience and all the things you have done, are doing, and will be doing for men. I think Lee also wants to say a few words too.
Oh yeah, Tom, I think, you know, two things that I picked up on that I thought were really important is, yeah, men are getting accustomed to doing it alone, right? It's, you know, the work we do on men's teams is unusual now. That's different from the past. And you know, when you talked about, you know, we had Warren Farrell. I'll send you a link, but he was at the last summit, and he had done a TEDx talk on how he correlated all the shooters, and I think he had a large number, 90-something% of them grew up in a fatherless household. So what you're saying about in the, you know, the new environment where there's just, you know, women are raising the kids and dads are gone, it has you know, there's a correlation from the research he's did to school shooters and those types of individuals.
Yeah, you know, and the thing is, you can't put it on the women. You know, moms are really awesome at being moms, Moms.
Oh yeah, that's not what I was saying. Just to be clear, that was
Oh yeah.
lack of a father presence.
No, I'm
It's
just.
not, it's not that women are creating. Yeah,
just
lack of a dad deprived households.
I'm piggybacking what you said. Like,
Yeah.
Moms are really great at being moms. They really suck at being dads. They can't be dad. Dad has to be the one, and and unfortunately, most children end up with in mom's custody, and whether it's choice or no choice, it doesn't matter. That's not important, but they need that masculine and feminine balance that we all discuss. That the friction in between masculinity and femininity. There's in the middle of that, there's that energy. It's called, what do we call it? Niggling, and when we deprive our children of that balance, that's where we get a little bit out of hand. That's when men's egos get involved. But there's a small percentage of men. It's so magnified by the media what men are doing. And but at the same time, it's here, and I think that it's a great opportunity for us to up our game in helping younger men, especially men who do not have a dad, to mentor through events, get them out on an overnight, and start talking about what a code of honor for a man is, for a young man. Yeah, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to screw up, but let's make the little mistakes. It's about respect. It's totally about respect. And thanks for letting me just speak my mind about it.
You're welcome anytime.
There's so many things that's going through my head, but it's like you can have a whole seminar. But my point was, when I wrote this morning, if men, how did I write that? If men just live their life with a basic code of honor, and we wouldn't have to worry about a Me Too movement. Like for me personally, I walk down the street. I live in a very small village of 2,800 people. I live in the Hamptons. In the summer, it's like 28 million. But I walk through my village very confidently because I know who I am. I would never, I would just never disrespect a woman, period.
Right.
And it's hard enough. I've been married 21 years. Once in a while, I'll have a slip of the tongue, and boy, will I really pay for that. So, but it's about respect. I'm happily married for 21 years. It took me 2 tries. I was a single dad, and it wasn't fair to my sons. They weren't getting any balance. All they were doing is getting this, I'm very competitive and, rah-rah kind of stuff. And they were getting too much of me. Where's mom? So, and my wife took on that role. I was a single dad, and Cindy and I got married and had 2 more. And we raised our children. And they seem to be doing pretty good. So.
Yeah, they're doing great.
Congratulations. That is good stuff. Well, Tom, I'm going to let you go because Lee and I are going to close it out. But thank you again for sharing. And we're looking forward to seeing you on more of our conversations.
Yeah. Hey, Lee, one thing. I lost all the contacts on my phone about 8 months ago. So give me a buzz so I can get your number back.
Okay. I'll call you tomorrow, Tom.
Okay, buddy.
Yeah,
Thanks for making the conversation better, Tom.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Be well. Okay, my man. We got to close this out.
Nice job, Dr. Vibe.
No. Hey, everyone, we did it all together. Do you have any closing comments?
This is the beginning where, Dr. Vibe's offering his time. We're going to do 2 of these a month. So if you got topics, if you got people, I'm going to call Tom. I think he'd be great to have on. Topics or people and suggestions, send it to Dr. Vibe or myself, and that would be lee@menandmasculinity.com is where you could reach me. I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your ideas.
And Vent, I really enjoyed the conversation. I've just put Lee's email address in the comment section. Also, I'm going to put my email address in the comment section. Also, I guess my closing thoughts. First of all, thanks to everyone who came on. I'm just going to give a quick roll call. Tom, Gabe, of course, Deb. Can't do it all without Deb. C. Will, Tony, Boyle, Terry, Bobby, Patricia A., Gary Farb, Bobby, I think I mentioned you already. And we had some people on Facebook, Paul Holzer, Cliff Cannon. If I did not say your name, it's because of my mind, not my heart. So let me just put it that way. So I'd like to say thanks everyone for watching the first one of many. And again, if you have any guests you'd think would be great for M&M Explorers, please send the email to either myself or Lee. And we're looking forward to having more epic conversations. My last commentary would be, I was having a conversation the other day with a lawyer who deals a lot with family court and family law, especially with fathers. And he said something that really stuck out, that he said it about fathers, but I think it means for men. It also means for everybody. All men want is to be treated with respect and fairness. On that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching and have a great evening. Be well and keep the faith. Bye-bye.